how that works, because our consciousness taps into energy. And when you're crowded by a lot of intelligent people that think alike and you all go active, then you're gonna get in each other's ways. You're gonna eat each other's energies up. That's gonna be very distorting.
Yum, yum,
And
yum.
and at the same time, if you're alone and nobody is like you, then you got all the energy in the world. But yeah, great likelihood that you're not going to be able to apply it because none of the people around you will really understand it. But that's just the dynamics of consciousness, and the energies that come with it.
What a load of old bollocks.
Consciousness dynamics in social groups.
It's a load of
Quite
old
a
bollocks.
story. Quite a story.
Yeah, I can give examples.
No, I'd rather you didn't.
Did they start
Come
with
on, man, it's shit talk.
just so?
Yeah, it's a lovely story.
They start with just so.
Well, just test it out in your memories. If you are intelligent, then you know what it's like to be in the presence of people that have the same drive as you and the same wavelength. What happens to you in a response from your instinct?
You achieve quite a lot.
It's just yeah, I know. Because you're competing, you're on the same wavelength, and that's gonna drain the energy.
But competition
from
drives innovation.
Well, it challenges you. That's one thing.
Yeah. If you've got...
But it also tires you out. So, yeah, it's...
Yeah, but striving to be better does tire you out. If you've got a chip shop...
That's true,
and
that's
it
true.
just
If
sells,
you actually
all it
engage,
sells
then
is-
yeah, you become stronger.
all it sells is fish and chips, right? So that's its only thing. And then another chip shop sets up next door. The chip shop that's already there's got to suddenly up its game, so it starts selling kebabs. Those kebabs don't come by themselves. Got to contact distributors.
I think for the first hour, you need to go out of your way, Nathan, to try to like say thick as many times as possible. I don't care how you have to reference it, what context, just as many times as possible.
Do what as many times as possible.
Say thick.
Thick.
Yeah, like it, like you know, that's my favorite like term you use, like as an American when you use that, like when you're like going off on certain people, like it just really, it makes me so happy.
It's an abbreviation of some saying, "Get it through your thick skull." In other
Yes.
words,
Oh, I know. I just
It's
love the way
very
that you use
British.
it, and it's so British, and it's my favorite thing.
And it's a kind of civilized British. That's the cool thing about it.
civilized, as opposed to calling
Because
somebody...
it's a very moderate... yeah, it's a very moderate
It's
curse.
polite, but at the
Exactly.
same time, it's
That's
the
what
most,
makes it so
but
lovely.
it's the most hard-hitting, hammering, perfect word for these people. And
Oh,
just,
right. I'll
I just
substitute.
love it.
I'll
I
drop
love it.
I'll drop retard and replace it with thick or thicko.
As thick
Yeah.
as it gets. Every time you say you're as thick as it gets, I swear to God, like I have to take a shot or something like that.
Now, you can use retarded when they just keep on asking the same question or forget everything every time, because that is
See,
really retarded.
I'm American. I use retarded. When Nathan says you're as thick as it gets, it's like I feel like I hit a home run in baseball. It's like I cheer.
Right, 1 minute and we're starting.
All right, I'm gonna mute.
Let's not talk about
What, huh?
space, though. Please.
Yes.
Hey, where you
Oh,
going?
I love it. All the
Clowns.
space, and we go
Let's
with
talk
the
about
spaceship.
okay.
Okay.
We've not got any.
Okay.
You know why I say it like that, don't you? That's the way he says it, right?
Oh my God.
He does. See, that's how he says his name, Alkay, because he's got a bit of a Scottish accent and he's very soft spoken.
Got 60 seconds, son.
It just sounds terrible the way he says it. Alkay.
When you say it, it's like pouring coffee, though.
It's too good a name not to fuck up. You can fuck it up the best you can and it still sounds good. Alkay.
It's very ominous. Like a witch says it. Beware of Alki.
You notice how M. Scott Beach all of a sudden emerged after only the second time of me saying I got him on a milk carton.
What?
I think he knew that people were asking about him, so he's made an appearance to show that he wasn't the astronaut that was killed in a fucking.
He did?
Well, it was the second time in a month that I called him out on Nathan's show, and so I had him on a milk carton.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. Most importantly though, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Stopping Traffic in my Rasta hat, Anthony and Arwin. Good to have you.
Yo.
Good afternoon.
Are you there, Rasta?
Mumble.
Mumble, yeah, scratch.
Doing something.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, and good night, and all the rest of that good stuff. Any signs
Indeed.
of curvature,
Sorry.
gentlemen?
Oh, before we do housekeeping,
All right.
space. Love it. Outer space, fantasy.
You had a couple of drinks, Arwin.
Spaceship, we go beyond the sun.
Okay.
Into the galaxy.
Doctor's on his way.
Okay, that was it.
Audio check, audio check.
We hear you, Rasta.
All right.
So you're in a bit of a spacey mood, Arwin.
Yeah.
You've been watching Star Wars again.
Nah, I have been downloading some, but I did watch the Solo movie, but nah, I thought it was kind of shitty, although the actor did really do his best to imitate the original character of Han Solo well. So, but meh. Other than that, no. Not a lot of space movies recently. Other stuff.
Other than the
I
upcoming,
don't know. I was just... We were talking about space in the back panel before the hangout started, and it's just...
No. You were talking about space, and me and Rasta both said that we didn't want to talk about space, and you carried on talking about space.
I wasn't talking about space. I was talking about Japanese culture and how they tend to love space a lot. So
Who cares? Let's not talk about space. Nathan, let's do housekeeping.
You are,
Right.
Anthony.
Let's do housekeeping.
Okay. Any signs of curvature?
No, Pontchartrain is not a curvature. It's just a
The
little
Japanese
bit of that.
have evidence.
curvature is what you see in outer space, and you look at the photo of the Earth. Sorry.
Crack. Lay off the
Japanese
crack.
are pulling new evidence.
Is that a no then? No signs of curvature?
No, Pontchartrain is not curvature. Pontchartrain is atmospheric, optical, fraudulent fuckery. Just in case anybody's thinking Pontchartrain might prove anything.
Any signs of obstruction? I'm only joking.
Yeah, lots of it.
Any signs of axial rotation?
No.
Sure. I had a good jape about dropping balls off buildings.
Ooh.
No. I'd love to see the actual evidence for the assertion. It would be really interesting. There must be somebody out there, like Science Lab or whatever, that's actually done that. I'd like
Try
to see
a basketball and then spin it, like twirl it as you let it fall, see what happens.
Yeah, that's called the Magnus effect, and George
Yeah.
kind of said it has a negligible effect on it, but it doesn't. It's complete. That's nonsense.
Have you seen it when they do it with a basketball off the top of a dam and it goes about half a mile downstream?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
shout out to George for getting that wrong as well.
it's one of the
Coriolis
magnificent
wrong.
effects of turbulence.
Well, it's just
Shout out to
interacting with
George
the
for
air,
getting
isn't
that
it?
Coriolis wrong and getting the Magnus effect wrong.
That's the
Anything else
whole
you
Shout
got
out
wrong,
retracted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shut
shout
up,
out retracted.
George? Yeah.
Any signs of gas pressure without a container?
No, don't be silly. That defies the second law of thermodynamics, Nathan. Entropy exists.
Can't happen even in the wildest imagination, or it can only happen there, pretty much, because it doesn't.
But
It can't theoretically work.
I bet it could happen in your imagination, Arwen.
Yeah, of course.
It's happening in a lot of people's
no,
imagination
actually,
right now.
no. It's just black when I imagine space. But yeah, unlit air is also going to be black. So
About the distance to the sun?
There is
is
no
none.
distance to the sun.
exactly.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Maybe one day.
Maybe.
That would be a no.
Sean Hufford's boobs.
Well, directional pressure, but yeah, you know.
What about a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Of course. At the presupposed spherical Earth.
Go on then, where's your evidence?
Well, you just have to assume R, and everything will be all right.
That's not evidence of a molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. That's just assuming R. I'll get to that now if you like.
That-
Any evidence
you're-
of that
No,
R
you have to
value?
presuppose the spherical Earth, and then it works.
Yeah, but my next question is going to be about whether or not you've got any evidence of the presupposition itself. So any evidence of the R value.
Well, no.
That's no good then. You can't just use the R value to say there is a molten iron core.
Well, if you could, then you could.
Well,
Jesus, this
they
is taking
could,
its time.
they did. That's why we're here.
Indeed.
This is taking its time. Come on, Nathan, speed it up a little bit.
That's it. That's the last one.
Ah, you're so.
I'd like to do a song dedication.
Song
Go on,
dedication.
then.
Song dedication.
This is not a
Gonna
music
go out
show.
to Uncut Beach, and it's gonna be "Daddy Wasn't There" by Austin Powers.
Love it.
Good
He
one.
was in my backup channel. Subscribe to my backup channel if you haven't already. You get a little bit extra of these shows. So they're called live and uncut because I carry on the recording in the in-between bits. So worth checking out Nathan Oakley channel. But M. Scott Veach was in there on the upload for yesterday's show saying, you don't need a barrier because you don't need a barrier. The pressure keeps it to the earth. And I was like, no, he said the force keeps it to the earth. I was like, the force, eh? Right. No. Second law of thermodynamics violation is what you're describing, Mr. Veach. Can't have gas pressure without a container. Just asserting that you don't need one, a barrier that is, doesn't prove there isn't one.
Well, the universe would have to be the container, and that would mean there would be no vacuum. And whatever is going to be out there and on the Earth is going to be comprised of air that will spread out. Because
Eventually you'll get to a
entropy.
container, won't you, Arwin?
Hmm?
You can't have everlasting entropy. The whole point is that it will diffuse and fill the space that it's in.
Indeed. But yet, to assume that space is eternally large is also even something that science really doesn't accept. When
No.
it comes down to
Quite right.
even the baller science.
Have they got... Well, no, because they've got an ever-increasing, expanding universe. So, you know... it's
Now,
not
they
like
say the size of it is bigger, but it's not like it's in the nothing. It's not in an eternally large confine. They say it is kind of looping, sort of. It's still being speculated about. It's so
No, they
far out
don't.
there.
They
of
say
course.
it's ever expanding universe. Give me a break.
No, the universe itself is expanding this space. The bubble, as it were, of total present space expands.
Yeah, just sounds like a storyline from Red Dwarf.
Well,
It does, though. I mean, they had all of this heliocentric
Everybody's
nonsense
dead.
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What about?
No, everybody's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Are you sure?
But in
Daddy wasn't there.
in Red Dwarf, they had an episode called Backwards, one of my favourite episodes, and they go through a white hole in space because they're flying through space, of course. And when they travel through it, they go to a much further distant time when the universe starts contracting. So instead of the Big Bang, they have the Big Crunch, and everything starts running backwards, time included. So they travel back to Earth, and everything's running in reverse.
Oh God!
Just bonkers.
Is that the episode where he goes in the bushes?
Yeah.
Comes out, don't ask.
yeah, exactly. The cat goes into the bushes to relieve himself and finds he's taken something on instead of relieving himself. Yeah, very disgusting. Yeah, just nonsense. Science fiction. That was the whole point of things like Red Dwarf and Star Wars, for that matter. They're just there to reinforce the global bullshit. The idea of space is backed up by, 50% of sci-fi movies are based in space.
Mm-hmm. It's a science fiction storytelling medium.
Right.
It's like a theater set of set pieces
Mm-hmm.
for stories to be told in.
Absolutely.
And it's very, very broad.
Well, NASA are on the cutting edge of cinematography. No, they're not on the cutting edge of space travel, because that's nonsense. They're on the cutting edge of cinematography.
Well,
Speaking
they're
of
on the
NASA,
cutting edge of theorizing about space travel.
let's talk about the overt low IQ of all astronauts ever exposed to a public interview.
Okay, so what do you want to say about the low IQ of all astronauts?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to all of us that virtually all astronauts that ever give public interviews or Q&As, like Pettis and, his little chucklehead buddy, I mean, it's just, that always just continuously rubs me the wrong way. How they seem like they aren't even high school graduates. I mean, let alone, Pettis seems like he's, got some issues.
Do you not look at the astronauts and think that they're laughing at us?
I just see them hiring like a bunch of people out of the special ed class, like that are literally just like they're just like fantasists, people that they don't have any concept of reality anyway. And so if you tell them, you're going to space there, buddy, and put them in a nice little video ride, they're going to come back going, we can see the stars in the daytime and in the Magellans. Come on.
That's why Red's Rhetoric would be an ideal candidate to work for NASA, because he's totally brainwashed. Utterly and utterly brainwashed.
Sure, I've plugged it before, but I'll plug it now. Dilly Gill. So if you want to check out how NASA fakery's been done over the ages and how they've got to the stage now where they can literally render in real time 3D overlays on top of what looks like the inside of the ISS, essentially a load of guys on high wires, but how they faked it. So who's our guest? How you doing, Chocolate?
Good morning.
Good morning, good evening.
Anybody think it's funny that Travis isn't here, considering he went out with his new little flat Earth girlfriend to the premiere of Beyond the Curve last night, and he's ironically sleeping in this morning?
Yeah, yes. Travis is going to be exhausted, isn't he? He's going to be recovering.
Yeah, he's going to be extremely exhausted, to say the least.
Nah, he's probably going to get in chat.
I don't think he'll be able to walk for the next couple of days, let alone...
I think this is totally unnecessary. No need at all.
All this gossiping. Well, at least he would have found some proof of curvature.
He opened himself up for it since he shouted her out so many times, so now he's open to ridicule. I'm still holding her former military keister over the fire.
You single by any chance, Rastahat?
No, I'm married 10 years.
Oh, fair enough. I'll let you off then.
Well, he sounded like a bitter singleton, Nathan.
Well, normally when people ridicule other people's, little love-ins that they're having, it's because they're single.
No, Travis was trying to get me to actually go to the show, like, with them, to, like, go meet up with them, like, with my wife and stuff, because we only live a couple hours away.
He wanted to double date with you.
Yeah, he was trying to get me and my wife to drive down to LA to go to the show with him.
I love it. He wanted you as his wingman. That's ace.
I was actually super down. Unfortunately, my wife is a chef and she has to work all weekend.
Fair enough. He doesn't need any help. He didn't need a wingman. And she seems perfectly lovely as well. Normal.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nathan, I'm feeling a little bit depressed.
A normal military asset.
It's a normal honey trap. Sorry, what was that, Anthony? You a bit depressed?
I'm feeling a little bit depressed. I've been misrepresented again.
Misrepresented?
Yeah. Do you want to share my screen and I can share the story?
Yeah, sure.
Let me know when we're on.
Yeah, you're on.
So as most people know, Nathan and I live in the UK. And we went to the Jury's Inn in Birmingham recently for the first Flat Earth conference in the UK. And I led the opening on the Friday night. And we had, at the time, a back and forth with people like the Rumpus, because I was challenged to go repeat my observation that I did. But instead of doing it from the hilltops, go down onto the beach and do it. That was one of the things that I was challenged to do. And I basically went and did it. So if I zoom in a little bit, just to show you a little bit of what this island should look like. Basically, what I was trying to show people was that we cannot live. Ooh, I need to make that terrain button. There we go. We cannot live on a sphere because we see stuff that's too far away. I'll make this a little bit bigger so it can be seen. Why am I not getting a three-dimensional topography? What's going on? Let me try and work out why. Hang on. I'm sure it's because of that. That's better. So, it's been a while since we've touched on anything to do with the Isle of Man, so I'll just repeat it a little bit. We see Snaefell Mountain, we see North Barul, and then we see this land that's down. You can see Ireland in the back. Not quite sure why that would be, but anyway. These hills that are here, and all these hills that go off into the distance, is what I was looking for. And I was challenged to go and get this information from the beach because I got it from the top of the hill, and whatever height that turns out to be, about 100 feet. If it was really a sphere, there would be absolutely no way possible that you could ever see it on a sphere if we can get the land from the beach, because you shouldn't be able to get it. So I went back to the beach, and I'll show you the bit where I zoomed out first, because this is basically the creme de la creme. These are the effects, which are contrast and brightness. I've taken them off the video. And this is the bit where I zoom out, because basically it was to show that I'm actually on the beach. Now, if we live on a sphere, this should be 700 feet behind the curve of the Earth, right? And that's not taking into account perspective. Once you take into account that the 300-foot cliffs that we see are completely and utterly behind the curve, taken from the beach with the camera on there should not be seen. So we can see that the land that I first failed to identify is seen on screen now. That's North Barul. And I'm going to look down to the point where it drops into the sea. And then when it drops into the sea, we're down to like 100 feet or so. I go across the gap to find this little bit of land. And this is only 300 feet, but it's big enough to see just. And it's in the middle of the screen right now. But you shouldn't see this. This should be 700 feet behind the curvature, with a bulge that's stopping you from seeing it, and that doesn't account for perspective. But this was taken from the beach, lay on my belly on the wet sand, and it's a problem because it's 700 feet of missing curve, right? And we can see it. Now, it is very small. It is 34 miles away, and it's only 300 feet tall, so perspective makes things get smaller as a function of distance. Well, how tall or how big is 300 feet going to look like from 34 miles away? I mean, it's half the height of Blackpool Tower. It's not that big, but that's what we can see. So this is the imagery that I released at the Jury's Inn as the exclusive for FE Core. But unfortunately, what's happened is that it turns out on the front page of the Isle of Man Examiner, the paper that they get in the Isle of Man, they've got an article that says that it turns out the Earth is not flat after all. Go to page 4. So when you go to page 4, you get this section, Isle of Man's proof. Isle of Man's proof that the Earth is flat. starts off pretty positive. Everyone from Aristotle to NASA has got it wrong. The Earth is flat. And seeing the Isle of Man from Lancashire is all the proof that some need. Flat Earth and Me has shown off a video proving his theory that at a Flat Earth conference in Jury's Inn in Birmingham. He says that the fact that he can take a picture of the Isle of Man from England proves that the Earth is not curved. In a report by Esquire, he said, quote, "I lay on the beach on my belly. The water was there 20 minutes ago, and now I'm lying in the wet sand. There's people on the beach wondering, what the hell is he doing? And I'm wondering, can I see it? Is it there?" Now, I did actually say that. That quote, Sean Hufford, is accurate. That's how you quote people. You do it accurate, so the citation is true. And that is what I said. After Mr. Riley's speech, flat earthers have become obsessed with the Isle of Man videos proving that the Earth is flat, cropping up upon YouTube frequently. There is just one problem. They don't prove that the Earth is flat at all. Really? Well, all that land I've just shown you is 700 feet below the curvature of the Earth, with a bulge of water in between you and it. And it has not been reduced in size as a function of distance in accordance with the rules of perspective, which is not an artistic illustration. It is real world. That's the way we see. None of that land should be seen. So, actually, the reason you see the Isle of Man is due to refraction and how light rays bend with the surface of the ocean. The idea has been repeatedly debunked on sites such as Metabunk and Flat Earth Insanity.
Can I just
I'm not
interrupt
familiar with
there?
Flat Earth.
Sorry, Anthony. So we're going to hear now what Mick from Metabunk's actually got to say on this subject.
You can conclude this point by saying that you've accepted that it was based on an assumption. Do you still maintain that position?
Well, it's the standard model of the
Sorry,
world.
the standard model has no scientific backing. It is an assumption, correct?
Well, it's the standard model.
Sorry, the standard model has no scientific evidence. You only assume a value of R. Correct, Mick? For crying out loud, man.
Yeah.
Right.
So to claim that it's been debunked on sites like Metabunk and Flat Earth Insanity is not true. It's not factually true. What has happened on Metabunk is that we've realised that things do get smaller as a function of distance. That light does not bend in arc of 7/6, based on a presuppositional R value that Mick himself admits that he cannot prove. It is an assumption. And obviously, what was the other thing? I can't remember what the other thing was now.
Well, the main point...
Anyway,
let me just get it in. That's the main point. If you're going to claim that Mick West's Metabunk site or any other curve calculator site debunks what you can obviously and observably see in a picture, then you have to accept that those sites will give you a spherical Earth output regardless of what input you put in, because they are a begging the question, perspective hijacking curve calculator. They already assume the outcome. So, if you're going to use one of those calculators, you're already on a sphere the second you go to the site. It's called a curve calculator, and it makes it very clear in the formula at the top. You can put in your distance to target, you can put in your elevation, but the radius of Earth, they've already got. So you don't need to do any measurements or distance calculations or height with any of what you look at. You just need to look at it and say, there it is. No explanation required. Or you can assume you're on a sphere and go from there. That's what the Metabunk calculator does. It doesn't prove anything. It certainly doesn't debunk Anthony's observation. It's just an observation. He can see this stuff because it's there. Now, if you want to claim that the Earth is a sphere and light's bending around that sphere at 7/6 of the radius of the sphere, then you're an idiot. You're deluded, and all you're doing is begging the question. You're guilty of logical fallacy. Anyway, sorry, Anthony.
And you're guilty of stupidity as well, because if you're going to claim that it's debunked, then it has to actually be debunked. You can't say it's been debunked and then it is debunked. It has to be proven that it's wrong, and they haven't proved it. All they've given is a story that's lovely, but has no evidence to support it. Because the problem is, it doesn't tell you about perspective. Things get smaller as a function of distance. Light does not bend at the rate of 7/6 of the radius of the Earth. And the radius of Earth itself, by way of Mick himself, is accepted that it's an assumption. It isn't actually true. So to claim that, for this paper to claim that it's been repeatedly debunked on sites such as Metabunk and Flat Earth Insanity is fallacious. It's utterly rubbish. Now I don't
The
know
entire
why,
body of science.
I don't know why anybody would believe that this would be true, but they're all going to believe because it's so far out and crazy. But let's be honest, none of that land should be seen, none of it, and it can be seen from the beach. Well, I don't know what else to say about it other than, well, that's not being supported by the claim itself. But anyway, Metabunk points out that if Earth really was flat, you would be able to see the whole of the Isle of Man, rather than just the tip of the island's highest peak, Snaefell. Well, that's not what I showed, is it? I didn't show the high parts of the Isle of Man. I showed the low parts of the Isle of Man. And there's stuff that shouldn't be seen. Who cares about the high points? Nobody's going to argue that point. That is called a straw man. I did not show anything about Snaefell. Pardon?
I said hates Earth.
So,
Sorry. Go ahead.
So the tourism website for Cleveland near Blackpool says that if you're lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, you are seeing the Isle of Man with the help of an atmospheric phenomenon. Really? So a concrete noun has now become a phenomenon, Nathan. Have you got anything to say about this phenomenon claim?
Hey, Billy. Can you hear us?
Yeah, hear you loud and clear.
Oh, good to have you. Hey, Pete. Good to have you. Hello.
The entire body of science, Riley.
Nate, did you catch my question then, Nate?
I didn't.
Shut up.
Oh,
Hey, Tommy.
Somehow now I can join for some reason. Wonder if someone unblocked me.
It says if you're lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, you are seeing the Isle of Man with the help of an atmospheric phenomenon. So we know quite a lot about phenomenons in general, Nathan, don't we?
Kicking me and blocking
Shut
from
up.
the hangout will only show your dishonesty and confirm my conclusions about you.
I'm gonna have to
Nathan.
drop onto mute a sec.
Hey, Zinda. Can you hear us?
Hi.
Good to have
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you.
Good to have you.
Nathan, you're willing to offend people in your pursuit of alleged search for truth, but you only offend and require unrealistic amounts of evidence to those who disagree with your views.
Hang on a minute. Have you been offended?
Yes, he offends everybody, not just me.
I offend people.
Oh, I'm really sad that you've been offended.
Oh, I'm really good. My emotional strings are being pulled. Oh my god.
Sorry,
Have you got any evidence for your assertion?
Have you got any evidence for your assertion?
Come on, you need
Are you really
evidence
coming back to troll now, Tommy?
No, I'm asking you a question and I'm not getting a response because what you're doing is you're just red herring the question.
You didn't ask a question. You made an assertion.
What's the question? You're willing to offend people in your pursuit of alleged
That's an
search for
assertion.
truth, but you
That's
only
an assertion.
You only offend and require unrealistic
That's another
amounts of
assertion.
evidence to those who
You're making
dispute your
assertions. Hello, do you not know
What's
the
it
difference
like-
between
what's
an
it like
assertion and a question?
Sharing the behaviour of somebody with biblical religion. What's
Excuse
it like?
me. Do you
There's
know
a
the
question for
difference
you.
between an assertion and a question?
What's
You
it
just-
like sharing the behaviour of somebody who believes in biblical religion?
Sounds like Tommy's jumped ship again.
No, I'm asking questions. I'm asking questions to
No,
Nathan.
you're not. I've just pointed out you've made two assertions. You haven't got a question at all. What's your
it
question?
like sharing the behaviour of somebody who believes in a biblical religion? That's a question.
It's not a question.
Question.
That's an assertion.
No, the question. It's
What's
a
your
simple
question?
question. I'm asking you what it's like to share the behaviour.
Would
Tommy,
I
you
like
woke-
to? Is
Tommy,
that your
you've
question?
woken up with a globe head on today. No globe head or flat head. There's no teams, there's no size, no bias. It's just my assumptions about Nathan. You, by the way that you're behaving by blocking me out the hangout, just proves that now because I've presented evidence to you and you deny
Tommy.
like you
Nobody
deny evidence.
blocked you.
Tommy,
Feminist,
if
you
you were
deny
black,
evidence.
you
Like a
wouldn't
feminist
be
denies
on
evidence.
here.
You share
Nobody
the behavior
blocked you.
symptoms the same as
Tommy.
a feminist also.
Tommy,
Nobody blocked you.
if you were blocked, you wouldn't be on here now. You realize that,
Yeah,
right?
because you unblock me just to
Who
prove to the
unblocked
chat
you?
that
Tommy.
somebody's unblocked me.
Tommy,
Nobody had
relax,
you blocked.
relax, man. Relax. Nobody blocked you. The
I
link
told you,
took a while for it to get on so that people came in. All of you guys came in at the same time.
All right,
I told
forget
you-
the squabble.
I told you that in chat. I said, I bet you're not.
Here's a question.
And here you are.
Is it possible that you're misunderstanding and strawmanning the heliocentric model
So
claims in your
wait,
housekeeping
wait.
questions? Is it
So
possible?
So you
What's
came
the
in
claim?
here with mad hype right now because you think somebody blocked you, and that's why you're like.
Forget about that. Forget about that. Let's move on.
Sorry,
Okay.
your question is what? Is
Nobody
it possible,
blocked you, man.
Is it
Is
possible?
it possible that you're misunderstanding and strawmanning the heliocentric model's claims in your housekeeping questions?
Well, have you got an answer for them?
Is it possible? I'm asking you.
Yeah, it's
Very
possible.
simple.
Have you
No.
have you got an answer for them? They're just questions. I asked you if you knew the difference between an assertion and a question.
I think because your question, like for example the gas pressure question. Like I said, things aren't as black and white as you present them. But
it's
you
a question. Do you not understand the difference between an assertion and a question? If I'm asserting something, then I'm representing something. If I'm asking a question, I'm not representing a position. I'm asking a question, dumbass.
If you ask the question in the wrong context, then that is straw manning the question. You're saying that
straw manning the question.
You're saying they're asking questions in certain ways, and what you're doing is you're misinterpreting them things that science are claiming, and then putting it into a way that's not correct because you only take on things that suit your biased view. Like a feminist would only take on what suits her narrative, and then rejects everything else. The fact that you rejected evidence for evolution the day before yesterday with me, just proves that you ain't willing to digest the information rather just because it disagrees with what you think.
There is no evidence for
No,
evolution.
we all listen to your evidence of evolution, Tommy.
Why is Tommy
no, there is no
everybody?
evidence for evolution.
We all spent a lot of time with you on this evolution thing. You yourself conceded at the end of that conversation after only about 20 minutes.
He denies evidence. He denies it.
You acknowledged that your so-called evidence wasn't actually evidence that you thought it
Feminist
was.
denies evidence when you present it to them. That is
right,
the same
and what you were calling evidence,
Hold on, guys. Hold on.
Not evidence.
Sorry, I don't know
what
if I
you were
remember.
calling evidence for evolution was not. You conceded that.
You deny everything that doesn't support your narrative. So you would not digest information like evidence for evolution because you're just denying evidence denier. You're an evidence denier.
And they're pushing evolution onto us because they believe in this social Darwinism thing where like the elite.
It's not what we believe in, mate. It's not what we believe in. It's not about what we believe in. You are denying evidence.
Tommy, you didn't provide
evidence. You deny. You're an evidence denier. You're an evidence denier. Simple as that.
Stop making claims.
You had evidence.
Put down the
and you had no
a lot of
evidence.
accusations.
Sends evidence to you, and you deny the evidence.
No, you didn't have evidence.
Your biased views are to present religious views, and then you
stop a
accuse
second.
people of having religious views.
Tommy,
I'm
trying to talk to you.
The
Tommy,
evidence.
what you're doing is you're disrupting the hangout, repeating the same thing 5 times. So I'm going to try and ask you a question, see if you can hold your tongue long enough to give me an answer. At the end of the last hangout, I asked you specifically for your scientific evidence of evolution. I asked you also if you understood what scientific evidence was, and you said you did not. So have you gone away and acquired scientific evidence of evolution?
Have you got scientific evidence for your assertions that the Earth is flat? No, you do not have the scientific method. No, you do not. No, you do not. What you do is you deny evidence that contradicts you.
Observer.
Deny evidence that contradicts you.
Long-distant observation.
Evidence that contradicts you.
There's not
shouting the same
flat out deny evidence.
Hold on a second.
Because it doesn't support your narrative. It's as simple as that, Nathan.
Tommy, if you keep shouting the same thing 5 times, I'm going to kick you out. You're just disrupting this conversation. Don't shout the same thing 5 times, please. So, Tommy, you've now made a different assertion about the Earth being flat and my scientific validity. You were casting aspersions on me based on my discrediting of evidence, based on evolution specifically. So, I'll try and get you back on track. I asked you for your scientific evidence of evolution. Do you now understand what A, scientific evidence is, and B, do you have any scientific evidence of evolution?
I muted you, Tommy, so unmute yourself.
Somebody mute him. We've been kicked.
I muted him.
Is that just phones dropping, or is that a sniper?
He's not being kicked. Being kicked.
He needs to evolve the ability to unmute himself.
You not mute other people in the hangout. If they get too disruptive, I'll kick them out. Don't mute them though.
Hey Tommy, please calm down, man.
So, Tommy, in your own time, do you have any scientific evidence for evolution? Yes or no?
Evidence everywhere. Yes, your wisdom teeth are de-evolving out of your body because they used to be useful. Now that's a change. If we were designed, we wouldn't have been designed with so many flaws and faults. People get born with defects. That is also shows you that it's not design, because we are adapting to our environment. Exactly the same reason why your teeth now your wisdom teeth are growing out of your body, because your jaw has reduced size because we use cutlery.
No, that's all about breeding, you dumbass.
Arwen,
that's how
it's called microevolution at best. That's
guys,
not
I'm trying to
macroevolution.
Little changes make big changes over long periods of time.
That's adaptation.
It's still micro. It will always be micro.
It's
You're never going to change from a lizard
It's
into
not
a man.
There's evidence for it.
stop.
It's all conclusive. It all points in the same direction.
One
all the
species
hypotheses lead
cannot
into a
turn
theory.
into
It's a
another
fact
species.
that its evolution is a fact, and you're arguing against facts.
No,
because
it's not.
You're all religious. You're all religious. You all believe in the Bible.
Biologically
That is the truth.
impossible.
Do not lie. You're trying to use the same
Tommy, I'm going to kick
against
Tommy. I'm going to kick you out. Tommy, I'm just going
Your
to kick you out
evidence
if
is
you keep
total
doing this.
shit, man.
Wait.
I'm trying
Tommy,
to...
are you talking about evolution?
Oh, he's run away. He's run away like a coward.
He's
come in to rumpus the hangout, tell us that we're all religious zealots, and ignore my question. So even though he's run away like a coward, I'm going to repeat my question for Tommy. So please don't interrupt me. I'd like Tommy to be able to hear my question again for about the 5th time. Tommy, my question to you was fairly concise. What is your scientific evidence of evolution? Wisdom teeth aren't scientific evidence. So, because you have asserted for the 2nd time, after being asked what your scientific evidence is, that wisdom teeth... Oh, for crying out loud, who's that?
Psychic Warrior.
Hey, Arwen. Hey, Nate.
So, please don't interrupt this point that I'm giving for Tommy means just interrupt me willy-nilly, right, Arwen? Thanks a bunch.
Somebody was coming in.
I can see. Tools. I'm not blind. Thanks, Arwen. I'm running the show. What are you going to do? I mean, you can snipe them if they're bad people, but I just want to get my point across to Tommy because he's ignored it. It won't take more than 30 seconds, please. Right, Tommy, my question was, what is your scientific evidence for evolution? Wisdom teeth aren't scientific evidence. Now go away and figure out what is scientific evidence and then get me scientific evidence of evolution. That's what you're claiming. I want science, not a little story about wisdom teeth with an assertion it proves something. It doesn't. Now if you're too stupid to realise that wisdom teeth aren't scientific evidence, let me be the first to tell you. They're not! I've asked for science. Give me science. That's all. Sorry to jump down your throat, Arwen. Hello to all the new guests who've juggled around.
Hey, Nathan. I'd like to know if Tommy's, when he's talking about evolution, is he talking about a change in species, or is he talking about adaptation, like somebody mentioned?
Yo, Eric, I spent an hour with him about this, and he acknowledged wholeheartedly that he was incorrect, like, after going through all of this, and now he's jumped back on the panel making assertions that he's already conceded. And so I don't understand, like, why he's doing this, because it's already been conceded. I spent an hour with him after the hangout, and he conceded all of this. And so I don't know why he's wasting time on the panel reasserting this publicly when he's already conceded all of this. I mean, he's at best talking about microevolution and yet saying, but that points to macroevolution. And I mean, so, you know, once again, I'm full because I ate hamburgers. So I'm full, even though, you know.
Formological fallacy.
I just want to know if he's meaning a change in species, that a fish becomes a horse. I want to know what evidence he has for that.
That's exactly what he's trying to say that wisdom teeth point to. Wisdom teeth point to fish turning into horse.
But they don't.
And also same fish turning into man.
Yeah, fish monkeys. He believes he's a fish monkey. His grandparents were, his great-grandparents were fish, his grandparents were monkeys, and then Tommy.
There's no scientific evidence for any of this. This is all based on classification systems. So you take a classification system, which basically, as the name suggests, puts things into categories. This is X, this is Y. But taking a classification system and extracting out from that classification system is what gives you the pseudoscience of evolution. It has no scientific backing whatsoever. So when somebody says, is it macro or micro, you say, what is evolution? Because they both have the prefix. And the prefix evolution comes from a classification system. So just because you can put things into categories doesn't mean you can extract from that concept out that we've turned from one into the other. It's an utter nonsense. Pure bullshit. based on zero scientific validity whatsoever. There's no scientific evidence for it.
But the human feces goes through like all these different, life forms, supposedly. What utter nonsense that's been proven.
Yeah, there's no scientific evidence of that. All there is a classification system that people have taken from and extracted out from to give us evolution. But classifying
I've
things
actually
is
looked,
meaningless.
if I may, I've looked into this stuff a lot before Flat Earth, and about the wisdom teeth. There's alternative explanations for this, and that is that among the human ancestors, just within maybe in like 10 generations or something like that, or more, there could have been many humans at a time that were just very big.
But look, Arwen, I'm going bald now, and I like to swim more, so I'm obviously turning back into a fish. Obviously, I'm turning back into a fish.
I know. I'm just saying that there's an alternative explanation for wisdom teeth within the species, because, people can adapt, and they can turn out to grow bigger. The conditions are right. They can adapt, but it still remains human. It's just if you cross a very small person with a very big person, then there may be some discontortions in proportions in certain elements, and such things are inherited. And eventually, could be that you got these wisdom teeth from a certain generation that was just very big, or humans might have been bigger overall.
People seem to be getting bigger more recently.
Do you think the elite trick us into removing our wisdom teeth so we'll fall for their ball earth lies?
Yeah, it's called trans wisdom.
I'm really pissed I had my wisdom teeth taken out.
We lose some wisdom or something when we take them out.
Doesn't this fall into a category of adaptation and rather than evolution?
I just looked at the differences.
It is interspecies adaptation. It is within the species.
The difference is microevolution is genetic mutations and things like that, and adaptations is when you change to your environment, I guess.
Yeah, there's other things than genetics. Genetics have switches, and these switches have influences all over the place, and they are usually environmentally triggered, and it can change generational directions of your offspring. Genetics is much more complex than just the genes, than just the measurement. There's switches, and they're all over the place in what they can do.
That's I think epigenetic you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if you want to look it up, I think that's kind of legit. Yeah. Because
is Tommy going to come back with any evidence that a fish becomes a monkey?
I think he's very upset about this. So, maybe some evolutionist friend will sit him down and hold his hand and say, look, all of this has just come out of a classification system. It's not based on science. It's based on an arbitrary classification of different animals and calling them species. Yeah, that's just a classification system. Doesn't mean you can extract out that we've developed fish gills and all this other nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's just stories.
Arwen, so I think you spent a lot of time looking into this.
Yeah.
So the result of epigenetic will always be that the results can mate with each other, right? Like, is epigenetic the thing responsible for wolves turning into dogs? Is it? Or did I get it wrong?
I don't know.
It has to do with the mule, donkey, horse thing, I believe. Isn't that right?
No, that's different, because they are sterile. That's the whole thing. That's what happens when genetics, a genetic blueprint, a certain group, a certain system deviates too much. Then the species can no longer adapt, and they will become sterile or dysfunctional. And that doesn't lead to adaptation onto another level. It just leads to sterilization and death.
Just point something out, just before you go on. So wolves turning into dogs, again, how they are classified is arbitrarily decided by the person classifying them.
All right.
Well,
It's-
so
I don't know
to say that
I
they
don't know
are
with
of
the
the same
dogs.
family, for example, that's part of the classification system that's being used. It's not a means to say that one has turned into the other. That's nonsense, because it's you that's classified them, not you, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely, a dog and wolf, they're the same species. One is domestic, one is not.
Right. So they are basically the same blueprint.
But what's a species? It's part of the classification system. That's my point.
Canine.
But no, that's part of the classification system. These are arbitrary tags. We have assigned these things, and when we put them into groups, like whales and humans are both mammals, that's something we have arbitrarily assigned to two different species to group them together. Oh, right. I'm being rumpus by Arwin. My bad. Sorry, Arwin.
No, I disagree. That's not rumpusing.
Oh, you disagree that these are arbitrary assigned categories that we have given these things? You're saying that's not true? Oh, right. So God decided that these were families, did he? Oh, right, Arwin. Who decided what these groups were? Who decided what the groups were then, Arwin?
The function that these names have been assigned to, like mammal.
And who gave them those?
Very specific.
Who gave them those names, Arwin?
I don't know.
People, Arwin. We did. We arbitrarily assigned them, just as I said, and you disagreed. So you're wrong. I'm right. It's just an arbitrary classification system that people have extracted from to give us evolution. Saying things like dogs turn into wolves. No, nonsense.
I don't know if dogs turn into wolves. Could be, if they're the same species, basically. I don't know.
You're doing it again.
I don't know that much about it.
So if they're in the same classification system that we've arbitrarily assigned them with, this is nonsense.
Well, you could test it out. If a wolf could breed with a dog,
they can.
And the offspring would be fertile.
I just looked it up, and they can breed, and they have produced
well,
fertile
then they're
offspring.
basically the same species.
Yeah, that's how you breed
They're the same
huskies with wolves to create hybrids. They're a big hype over here in California. They make you have certain licenses and stuff. Basically, if your husky has a certain percentage of wolf in it.
Right. So
Some
my
animals
point,
can
so
breed and
my
they
point
produce
stands,
infertile.
even with that being said. So because somebody has arbitrarily decided that wolves and dogs are separate families, they can actually breed together. So they're not. But because we, men, have arbitrarily assigned them into different groups, suddenly they're different, and one's evolving into the other. No, we are arbitrarily assigning these tags to these groups. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a classification system.
Well, they have different characteristics, right? It's a way to categorize things,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. You're taking the characteristics and then lumping them into groups and giving them tags and labels. Well, so what? It means nothing.
Right. Well, fine. That's
Well,
how
it's the same thing as
biology is.
species. If classifying a fish and classifying as human as a different species, it's been designated by people. Maybe we just don't understand the deeper level of how we are connected. Not saying that that's true. It's just a story.
Oh, wait, was that you who was going on for hours saying that fish and bananas and us all came from the same place? God bless America.
Yeah. It was literally like hours, yeah.
Yeah,
5
dude,
minutes. I said
wow,
before. So
brutal.
what? Yeah, and you were talking about, you just admitted that microevolution is real, which I don't even agree with that. It's just a story.
No, I said
So,
what
yeah, if you
Tommy
believe
was saying was at best his description of what could be microevolution. I didn't say that. I was saying Tommy was at best attempting to make an argument for microevolution and using it to argue macroevolution. I didn't claim any of that crap.
Just listen back.
I know that within a species, it can go all over the place. All depends on the dynamics.
Dynamics of what? In a species, in the classification system, we've arbitrarily
social
assigned a certain group of things. It can go crazy. What, within the classified system that we've assigned it? No, Arwin.
Oh, right, you can just shove this all aside, but yeah, they've all been assigned specific functions.
By us.
It is a classification, and maybe it doesn't mean anything to you, but
Doesn't mean anything at all.
I find it rather reliable up to a certain degree.
Really?
Except for evolution, which is ridiculous.
Well, I can arbitrarily assign tags and names to things. So I can say that my kid's rocking horse is a form of transport, same as a train and a car, because I arbitrarily decide that it moves, therefore is transport. It fits into that category. Does that mean that it's transport? Because I've arbitrarily assigned it to that group? No. I've just assigned it a name. It doesn't mean anything. To extract out from that classification system is why we have the bullshit of evolution. Because people have taken a construct that is classifying things and putting them into categories and saying, from there, we can say that wolves turned into this and we came from bananas. It's the same principle. We've got this type of DNA. Therefore, in our classification system, we're the same as bananas. It is ludicrous.
It is. But it's only how the data is used and theorized about. And as I said, the theory of evolution is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous concept that cannot be proven. It doesn't work out, even within the available data. So
the data is just categories of things, though. It's not data. They're not gathering data. They're just literally putting things in categories. So when you say...
sorry, Nathan, biology is a huge field, and I must disagree.
Well, biology can follow the cause and effect method. It can follow science in biology. Categorizing things isn't science. That's why I asked Tommy for his scientific evidence of this. Because extracting out from categorization systems isn't science.
Yeah, but it is. In this case, it is. Because there is a direct element to each category. That's the whole thing. We just discussed this.
Really? And is there any cause and effect relationship to establish? Is there any cause
type of creatures with each other? Yes. Is the offspring fertile? Then it's the same species. It's very simple.
So you're putting it into a group based on something it does, Arwin. You've decided that's the group it sits in.
Exactly.
Well, so what? So you can't... that's fine. You can categorize things. You can have a library full of books, but to extract out from that categorization system is where you end up with evolution. Nonsense. Extracted from categorization systems.
I disagree.
Okay, well, Arwin, you said that they theorise. Well, in science, a theory is based on extraction from adherence to the scientific method. So you have an experiment, validity given to a hypothesis through systematic experimentation, and from that, you can build a theory. That's a scientific theory. What you've described is making stuff up based on a categorization system. Well, that's not science.
What? I'm not even talking. It's complex hypothesis again, and it is all based on tested things. The categories that you described. It's just, you call that, you group it. It's a group of data. And
wisdom teeth prove
scientific method, it is used, and then a complex hypothesis is extrapolated from that because biology is freaking complex.
That's just
so there is no other way if you want to make any sense of what's going on.
It's nonsense. You're just talking gibberish. A complex hypothesis gives you a correlation. That's what you get with a complex hypothesis, and you'd still have potential for experimentation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about categorization of things. That's it. Does it fit in this category, yes or no? If I say so, yeah. If I say no, then no.
Well, you can just address it by what it is about. Can it, is it fertile? That kind of stuff. You can just call it that and just leave the names out if that is what you want. But people actually that have learned about this know this. And not all people that are into animals actually believe in evolution. Really?
But you're just putting it into a group. That doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you anything, Arwin, other than
I'm
it's
done
in a
with the
group
subject,
you put it in.
Okay? I get it. I get it.
So categorization isn't causation. It's just putting stuff in a group and saying this is that group because I say so. That's all people have done. From there, they extract out that evolution is taking place because we've got this category and that category. Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's not valid. It's not got scientists backing it with systematic experimentation. It's meaningless.
You're grouping it together.
I guess that's where Tommy comes in.
Proving what, though? That something sits in the same category as something else? That I'm the same category as a whale?
Data and call it, categorize it, And the theories that made up evolution, you're calling them the same people. They're not.
That's not theories. I've just explained to you. A scientific theory is based on systematic experimentation, establishing causes and effects through systematic experimentation. If you do that, you can then move forward to form a scientific theory. But your theory is based on adherence to the scientific method, not categorizing things, Arwin. Not saying this is in the same group as that.
What the freaking hell do you want? Why do you keep on whining about this? I know this stuff. You talk about it every day.
Well, because you've just told me it's formed from complex hypothesis.
Don't complain to me about it. I'm not going to denounce biology.
Why are you shouting at me? Why are you getting annoyed?
Scientific method? Are you insane?
No, you've just told me that this is developed from complex hypothesis and that biology is very complicated. And I've said, no, that's just total nonsense jibber jabber. This isn't based on any science. It's based on categorization. And that is all.
Well, maybe not the scientific method, but it is classified as biological sciences.
Yeah, maybe. Shame it isn't.
Biochemistry, all that stuff.
Yeah, and you can assign names to anything, Arwin. Doesn't mean anything. That's why I ask for scientific evidence.
Nothing means anything. I know. Sorry, I'm not going on with you on this nihilistic trip. Sorry.
Not nihilistic.
It sounds like you're arguing just for argument's sake.
No, I just disagree with this type of approach. This is total nihilism. Leads to solipsism. The void. I'm not going there. I don't discard things that are useful. Sorry. So let's just move on to Flat Earth because I'm done with this subject.
I could listen to this forever.
Okie dokie.
So I watched a video about the Coriolis effect before. You talked to George, I guess, right? And I didn't have time to watch the whole video, but I've skipped a little bit. So I found it kind of interesting about the Coriolis effect. You mentioned atmosphere, right, Nathan?
Sure.
So I watched some videos and read some articles from scientists, but I'm really skeptic about this. So I'm going to tell you what my conclusion is from it. So what I understood from this video. And regarding to them, the atmosphere doesn't even matter when you're talking about the Coriolis effect. So I can paint wait a moment, if you want, I can screen share and give me some minutes and I can show you on Paint what I mean. So
for the super chat. So straight away you're saying the atmosphere isn't taken into account?
They say it. So just, I didn't really get a conclusion from it, still need it. So maybe you can explain to me a little bit. So the Earth is rotating supposedly at one rotation every 24 hours, right? So we have here we have 40,000 kilometers per. Wait, make a little bit, make a smaller one. This. Per day, right? That's all 24 hours. That means it's about. Wait, where's my calculator? Yeah. It's about 1,600 kilometers per hour, right? Here. And then, fuck, that's really not sharp. Never mind. So, then I'm going to draw more lines. Right? So here, let's say here's like the half, something like that. Let's say those are here 20. Let's say those are 20,000 kilometers, right? Just for the sake of argument, it doesn't really scale. And that means 20,000 kilometers. If you divide it by 24 hours, is like 833 kilometers per hour, right? So if you throw something like a ball from here, right? You were talking about reference frames, right? So if you take a ball and throw it in this direction, the conclusion should be that it doesn't land here. It should land a little bit further, right? This is what they say.
You
because
tell
of
me.
the Coriolis effect.
Is that what you're asserting?
To this logic, yes. If the Earth was a spinning ball, then the projectile I throw goes in the direction of the north with 40,000 kilometers per hour, but the Earth beneath it spins a little bit less. The speed goes a little bit down, a little bit down, a little bit down, until it reaches the point on the, let's say North Pole or before the North Pole that that didn't rotate so fast. That means the object should be a little bit more east, according to them. So now, what do you say about that? What's the problem with this theory?
Well, the problem is that George asserts that the projectile travels in a straight line through the atmosphere. So what you've just described, although you're begging the question and assuming the Earth is a sphere and using the sphere Earth as an example, which is fine for the example, what you're saying is there's a Coriolis effect. The projectile enters the second reference frame, the atmosphere, and appears to deflect because the ball turns underneath. Well, that is by definition the Coriolis effect. George asserts that the atmosphere travels along with the ball, and if that doesn't give you a Coriolis effect. If the atmosphere is travelling with the ball, then if it enters the atmosphere, who cares? It's travelling the same rate the ball is. So there's no second reference frame, according to George. However, we don't need to pay that any attention because George is a senile old bastard and doesn't understand the Coriolis effect. The Earth turns underneath the atmosphere. The problem comes when you observe powered flight, because obviously it's in the second reference frame, the atmosphere. So therefore, the flight should take less, east to west, west to east, because the ball's turning underneath the second reference frame. George asserts that second reference frame doesn't exist. One reference frame, according to George, attached to the Earth, according to George. George is wrong. You're right, based on an assumption that we're on a ball that's turning. The problem being we don't observe flights taking different times. We don't observe a Coriolis effect because there is no turning. The ball isn't in existence, and it certainly isn't spinning.
Yeah. So some evidence they presented was like the jet stream, you know, the stream airplanes take to go faster from one side to the other side of the Earth, right? The jet stream is about 500 miles an hour, something like that, 10,000 meters above the Earth. They say it's the result of the Coriolis effect, but those are things I can't really prove for myself. But thanks for your explanation, because I really didn't get it what you meant about that. So
it's confusing.
I'm going to look a little bit into this.
Which it's very deliberately being obfuscated and confused by George. So within 5 seconds of your explanation, it's clear that you understand the Coriolis effect as explained by people who believe they're on a sphere. You throw a projectile into the second reference frame that's not turning, and it travels in a straight line through that reference frame. However, because the ball turns underneath it, it appears to take a curved path from your position, because you're carrying on rotating while it goes through the second reference frame in a straight line. So it appears to deflect. That is by definition the Coriolis, and that's what you've described. So you throw the ball. Once it leaves the rotating ball, it travels through the atmosphere in a straight line. But because the ball carries on rotating, it appears to take a deflection. Well, that's fairly simple to explain to somebody if they understand what two different reference frames means. A ball rotating and the atmosphere. Your ball's obviously moving with the first reference frame when you're holding it. It's turning because you're holding it and you're on a turning ball. But as soon as you release it from that turning ball. It continues in a straight line, but you carry on turning underneath the atmosphere. Therefore, it looks like it's curving. It's not. It's just in a second reference frame while you continue to turn underneath that reference frame. Now, George, as I keep saying, because he's a senile old bastard, thinks that the two are connected by Velcro, like somehow atmosphere, you know, these particles of gas pressure that are completely devoid of any connection to each other are somehow Velcroed to the turning Earth. That's because he's an idiot. He's nuts. Literally, he's lost the plot.
All right. So if I understood the Coriolis effect right, it should happen too if the atmosphere didn't exist. I mean, it's of course it doesn't prove anything, right? But the Coriolis effect should exist too if the atmosphere didn't exist, because
that's correct. So if
all right,
yes, George
so I
tried
understood it right. Perfect.
Yeah, you're right. The second reference frame could be devoid of any gas.
Yeah.
So yeah, so long as the first reference frame, if you're holding a ball in a vacuum and the ball is, forget the fact that my eyeballs would have been sucked out of my head or whatever the effects would be and my blood would be boiling. Forget that. Let's pretend that I'm vacuum proof and I'm on a roundabout spinning in a vacuum. Once I release the ball from that turning roundabout, the fact that it travels through space in a straight line, which it absolutely would, doesn't change the fact that I continue to turn underneath.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the globe Earth model is kind of, you know, it's kind of solid, you know, and it's really hard to see through it because you have to go in such detail to point out some flaws. So yeah.
And when you do, you have people like George come along to basically get it wrong. Mainly, maybe intentionally, maybe not. Maybe he's just a senile old bastard. Maybe he's intentionally here to confuse people when it comes to the Coriolis effect, because it's not the simplest thing to understand in the first place. And when you've got somebody obfuscating and literally completely altering the definition while you're arguing about it, and will not concede, regardless of how many times you point out that he's incorrect, then it causes even more confusion. That's his purpose, it would seem. George is only here to confuse the audience. So when I explain that on a roundabout, very simple to understand, you sit in a roundabout at your playground with a ball in your hand, you turn around on the roundabout and you throw the ball. When the ball was turning when you were holding it, because it was on the roundabout, but when you let go of it, it wasn't turning anymore, because it's left the turning reference frame and carries on straight through the atmosphere. But as you watch that ball, it looks like it's curving. Well, you scale that up to the Earth, and the same principle applies. The Earth turns underneath the non-rotating reference frame of the atmosphere. And when you have a plane travelling into that, what do you know? You see no effects of Coriolis. Well, that's not because the Earth's got atmosphere velcroed to it, like George asserts. That's utter bollocks. Just designed to to put a band-aid over the bullshit. The bullshit being that we're spinning. We're not spinning. It's absolute nonsense. That's why we don't see any Coriolis effect in planes. But George would assert, in doublespeak, that's because we only have one reference frame. So he's simultaneously saying, you don't see any Coriolis effect with planes because there's only one reference frame. And powered flight, well, it's only in one reference frame. But as soon as I release a ball from my hand, it's in ballistic flight, therefore creating its own reference frame, so you do see Coriolis. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. We're not spinning. There is no Coriolis effect. Planes don't take different durations in different times, because the ball's not spinning underneath us. We're not on a bloody ball.
Yeah. Yeah. The reference frame thing was also interesting, because one reference frame still doesn't really make sense, as you said it. Yeah. Excuse me for some minutes. Please go on talking.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm back like 5 minutes later. Otherwise, you can kick me out if someone wants to join.
It's good. It's nice that you know, regardless of your position, can immediately recognise what the Coriolis effect is based on a definition given in a video. And it's fairly clear. Yeah. 2 reference frames. Earth spinning underneath the non-rotating atmosphere reference frame above it. And that's how you have Coriolis. It just causes a big problem when you have helicopters that should be able to take off, hover, and have the Earth turning underneath them. They're in one reference frame. They've left the rotating reference frame, so it should just carry on rotating underneath. Well, no, it doesn't. That's not because the Earth's got atmosphere velcroed to it, as George asserts, and others assert. Well, no, that's nonsense. You can't have atmosphere velcroed to the solid ground. It doesn't work like that. That's not how gases behave. That's how they assert it. Again, big problem if you ask them, well, how is that even possible in an open system? But we won't even go into that here. The point is, the Earth's not turning. It's nonsense. There's no evidence that we are. And any evidence they come up will be pseudoscience bullshit they make up on the spot, like dropping great big rocks from tops of towers and nonsense like that. Not scientifically validated. Nothing that you would expect to have after 2,000 years of an assertion that we're turning. You'd expect top quality scientific evidence to prove it. We haven't. We've got dickheads like George coming in saying that the atmosphere's velcroed to the Earth. One reference frame. Like, oh, there's no Coriolis then. You senile old sod.
You know, Nathan, he says that the heliocentric model is a lot, it's like really thick to get through or to see through, I think is what he said. Well, I think that's almost like a pun on the bulge. You know, they say that it's a lot to see through, you know, but in all reality, there never seems to be anything to see through at all that should be there.
Right, there's no effects of an Earth turning. You know, there's literally zero observable that would make you think you were turning. We're not,
or bulge.
Or bulge, yeah. Or there's any actual bulge from an Earth curve that's obscuring your way. You just see various
like you said,
effects.
There's a lot to see through. It seems like there's never anything to see through.
Yeah,
Clouds
obviously.
debunk George, don't they?
Say again?
Clouds debunk George, don't they, with his turning atmosphere?
Well, yeah, wind in general.
Oh.
I believe I saw a good video called George Can't Coriolis.
Was it me with the spelling error?
No, I'm saying I thought I saw a good video, you know, a week or two ago titled George Can't Coriolis.
Yeah, probably me. I'm going to round out for
I think it might have been some guy now.
I'm going to round out for a short break, so with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!